All right, let's do it. It's Davin. This is another episode of the Free Your Voice, Free Your Life podcast. Excited to hang out with you, have something on my mind, have noticed a theme emerging in some of the coaching work I've been doing, which got me thinking. I don't ever think I've done a podcast specifically about this before, and it perfectly piggybacks on the previous episode, which, if you haven't listened to, I encourage you to go back and check out. But before I get going on that, just want to remind you this week, I will be in Louisville, Kentucky at the Kentucky Performing Arts Center March 1st, bringing the Reset, my immersive sound healing experience. Really excited. I've never been to Louisville in my life, and I have two dear friends that live there, and we were sort of conspiring how together I might bring the Reset to Louisville, and weren't able to make it happen, quite honestly. And then, wouldn't you know, I was able to connect with someone at the Kentucky Performing Arts Center, and it happened. And I'm so excited because I get to go and I get to hang out with my friends and I get to bring this work that I'm doing. And then to make it even better, I'm going to be hosting a community circle singing gathering at this amazing space called Maybe It's Fate. Um, it is, from what I understand, an event slash co-working slash community building space. They do lots of really great stuff there, and that's going to be on March 2nd, so the day after the reset. So my hope is that I might make some new friends at the reset, and then the next day we'll get to hang out and sing together, and then I'll get on an airplane and go back to lovely Chicago. And then at the end of the month, just a reminder, I'll be in Philadelphia for the reset. That's going to be on the 29th of March, and that's at the Kimmel Center, specifically the Perlman Theater. Guess what? I also get to do circle singing there too. That information has not been announced just yet, but same deal. Next day, we're going to do a community-based singing gathering. My friend Joe there is setting it up. I'm stoked. And then, if you're in or around Chicago, two ways to connect with me this month as well. Can you believe it's March already? It's actually not. It's February. But in my mind, I'm in March. February is the shortest month, and for good reason, because it's cold and there's a lot of pain that comes with that temperature. Anyway, let me get back to this. March 12th, Chicago Circle Singing, open gathering. Anyone who loves to sing, come sing with me. We do it every month, the second Wednesday of the month. And then on the 16th, which is a Sunday, I'm going to be bringing a spring equinox sound healing experience to one of the most beautiful venues in the city, the Epiphany Center for the Arts. It's a converted cathedral. You get to go, you get to lie down, and you get to just stare up at the beautiful ceiling and all the gorgeous architecture around you, and you get to be bathed in sound. And I did this space for the first time. I performed at this space for the first time last year, and it was great. So super excited to be bringing that same experience back this year. I hope to see you there. I hope you'll come hang out with me. And then also as a reminder, you can hang out with me every Sunday on virtually on Zoom for Sit Club, which is my meditation, contemplation, conversation gathering that happens. And it's been happening since the pandemic, and it's one of the highlights of my week. It's free to attend. You just get to show up. All of this you can learn more about at davinyoungs.com. The reset you can specifically learn about at the resetsoundexperience.com, but there's links to all of this at davinyoungs.com. Okay, let's get to it. I want to talk specifically about an experience that I have routinely in my voice coaching work. And, this podcast originated as a means to sort of connect the dots between the work that we do with the voice and the holistic nature of what it means to become a human being that flourishes, someone who is on the path toward expansion, toward growth, toward healing, toward transformation, and is interested in using their voice as an avenue or a tool or sort of the soul guiding light. And I recognize that these episodes have often strayed far, far, far away from the voice. And that is really just speaking to the nature of what's happening with my work in general. It's not that it's straying away from the voice, but I'm interested in really talking more expansively, more holistically. But today I want to bring you something quite specific about the voice that then maybe parlays nicely into a broader conversation. So it is not uncommon for someone to come to me. Actually, I would say it's very common for someone to come to me to do work with their voice, to want to pursue more freedom, more ease, more authenticity, more openness with their instrument. more coordination. And one of the problems that they will express to me most often is that they have a sensation, they have an experience that they don't have enough breath, or that they're losing their breath, or that they're running out of their breath, or that the breath is somehow faulty or not working. And there are previous episodes I've done specifically addressing what that means and the power of the breath. But I want to talk about this in terms of what it tells us about our experience and about the voice. The name of this episode is It's a Symptom, Not a Cause. And this is something I think is so important and something I relay often to my clients that I work with, and quite honestly to myself. Because there's something about our human brain and our human condition that often approaches problems from a quite simple point of view. Well, I got to fix my breath. And, people will often say to me, I need to learn how to breathe. I don't breathe well. I'm a bad breather. And you might recall from previous episodes that I take real issue with that language. If you were bad at breathing, you wouldn't be alive. There's also sort of a subtle violence in that language that we hurl at ourselves. Well, I can't breathe. I'm bad at breathing. I'm no good at breathing. Clearly, I don't know how to breathe. This is the conversation that happens so often in our heads when we're trying to sing or even public speaking. I work often with public speakers, and they will express the same experience, same sensation. And what I want to say to you is your experience of your breath, the experience of the breath is a symptom and not a cause. It's a symptom and not a cause. Now, let me caveat this by saying all of us can become more coordinated in our breathing. In fact, it's something we should do. There's really no singular greater force for finding more regulation in our nervous system and more connection to our body, and quite honestly, more connection to spirit and universe and God than the path of investigating, learning about, exploring, coordinating our breath. It's a really noble and worthwhile effort. There are no downsides to becoming more aware of your breath, how your breath works in your body, how you might breathe with more efficiency, find more ease, coordinate it better. Please, by all means, do that work and don't hear what I'm saying as an excuse to bypass that work. It's so important. It always comes back to breath. Breath is our inspiration, it's our vitality, it's our life force energy, it's our chi. It's so important. It's everything. But your experience of your breath might not be the truth of the experience overall. Or the story that you're telling yourself about your breath and your breathing, it might be just the thing that's pointing you toward something more fundamental, maybe something more insidious, something that's sort of wedged deep down in that you haven't had the capacity or the ability or the awareness to notice. See, our relationship to our breath is really one of the fundamental things that I like for us to investigate. Not even the breath itself, but how are you relating to the reality that you are breathing and that your breath behaves differently in different situations. And so let's say you're just speaking in front of people and you have a feeling of breathlessness. You might also notice that during this sensation or this experience of breathlessness or running out of breath or feeling like you don't have enough air, that there are other things happening too. For instance, you might experience a tightness in your body. You might experience a tightness in your abdomen, in your ribs, in your shoulders, or maybe even in your throat. And you might also experience a dryness in your mouth. And you might also notice that your armpits are sweating. And you might notice that your knees are shaking. Now, I'm taking this a little bit further down the road because maybe you're not noticing any of those things. Maybe you just are noticing that you're running out of breath. But let me offer that one of the clues this might be giving you is that your breath is pointing you toward the fear and the anxiety that you're actually experiencing in the moment. All the time, I'll point someone toward this awareness without telling them explicitly. But I'll say, hey, do you notice that your breath feels tight in your body? And they'll say, yeah. And I'll say, do you think there's something else at play here? Do you think there's maybe something else that could be coming up, something else that feels like it's at stake? And to begin with, most people say, nah, no, I don't think so. I just think I'm struggling to breathe. And I'll say, could we get in touch with your heart for a moment? Or could we get in touch with, is there any awareness of discomfort, fear? Are there any stories running in your head? And again, often folks will be like, no, I feel fine. I feel fine. This brings me to the alternative title for this episode that I want to infuse with what it is that we're talking about. And it's this mantra and this phrase that has become so helpful to me, and I offer it to you as a gift because it can change your life. But it's this phrase that I repeat to myself, I think, daily. I have a number of them, but this one's a really good one. And it's so simple, but it's just this: it's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. This is why I invite you to listen to the previous episode, because we were talking about the ability or the capacity to accept the truth of our experience versus resisting it. But might I offer that when I say to you, is it possible that there's something else at play here? Is it possible that there's some fear that has shown up for you, or some anxiety, or some discomfort? And if you were to say back to me, no, I'm good. Especially if you were to respond quite quickly, I would go, okay, let's keep experimenting. Let's keep playing. Here's the thing: the feeling of breathlessness could very well be associated with dysfunction in your voice. And I'm not negating that. But often, the feeling of breathlessness or running out of breath is directly correlated with a dysregulated nervous system and a protective mechanism. A protective mechanism to hold one in safety amidst the perception of a lack of safety, or a threat, or a fear, or an enemy. See, when we get up in front of a group of people, or even if we're by ourselves and we're afraid that we might be heard, there are automatic responses within the body that will tell us about that fear. Your body is always tracking for the potential of a threat. And this is honestly just such a beautiful thing that we have within us, because it keeps us alive. It's about survival. It's why you've stayed alive this long, and it's why you will continue to stay alive. You know, in an innate way, that certain situations are dangerous and that certain situations could threaten your livelihood. But in modern contemporary human life, that capacity to track for danger is often out of sync with the reality of our experience. And so the body, that feeling of breathlessness, or that feeling of tightness, or that feeling of discomfort, maybe it's a pit in your stomach, a squeezing of the throat, it is so often a response to a perceived potential threat. Perceived potential threat. It is risky to be heard. It is scary to be heard. I don't care how accomplished, how comfortable you think you are every time you use your voice, especially in a way of performance, especially in a way of singing or speaking a message that you find important. You are doing that in the face of the possibility of danger, and your body will always tell you about it. Now, the beautiful thing about being a human is that we do have this capacity to change our relationship to these threats, to this threat response. Because, like I said, sometimes it's out of sync. You've seen someone get up in front of a room of people who love them dearly, and they're still scared to death to make a sound. And you have to feel some sympathy for that person, because it's not reflected in the group that sits in front of them. It's totally a story based on experiences from the past. But as a human, If we allow ourselves, if we develop the capacity, and I want to say here very clearly to begin with, this might not be something we can do on our own. It might be need to be something that we do with the support of another, whether that be a professional, a friend, or a loved one. But if we let ourselves actually feel the fear or the discomfort or the dread or the struggle or the suffering or the sorrow or the pain, we then can change our relationship to it. We might develop a greater level of compassion for ourselves. Man, you've been through a lot. You had those experiences when you were a kid and someone told you to shut up and sit down, or you got the message it was implied that because you were a woman, you shouldn't be heard, or you were a queer person and you thought it was really dangerous in your community to be seen. And so that's very much cooked into your body, into your being. And so, of course, you're scared to stand up in front and make a sound. Of course, there is fear. Of course. That compassion is one of the most beautiful aspects of this act of self-compassion. But you also might get to write a new story in that that is not the truth of your situation now. That was the truth, or that was what you received or perceived. But now you have a different level of agency, control. You've surrounded yourself by different people. You've got new skill sets. You're someone who's willing to take risks and grow. And so if you can say to yourself, it's okay to feel this, it's okay to feel this, you might be able to identify that the experience you're having is simply a symptom, not a cause. And it would be really useful on your path of growth, healing, transformation, your path toward flourishing, to get deeply connected, to become deeply familiar with the cause. Then you can communicate a different message to your body around safety. It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. So often, that response that I get from someone, they go, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine." When everything about what I visually see in their body and everything about the sound that they make says otherwise. That response comes from a place of self judgment that then gets projected onto me that it wouldn't be okay to say, "I'm uncomfortable. This makes me really nervous. I feel fearful. I feel afraid." And so I have to keep gently coaxing them toward that deeper awareness. Now, I'll also say that you might simply not be aware. You might not know. These habits might be so ingrained in your being that you haven't ever really become intimate with them. You're so used to the discomfort. You're so used to the tightness. You think that's how it is. You actually think that's necessary to create what it is that you're trying to create. You might believe that you should struggle, that you should suffer, that there should be pain, that you should sweat, that you should be hoarse after you speak or sing. And I'm here to tell you that none of that is true. That you can achieve what it is that you want to achieve with more ease, with less suffering. It doesn't have to be normal to struggle so much. It's not to say that times won't be difficult and that you won't meet challenges and that you won't be befuddled at times at what's going on. You won't feel confused. But what I am saying is there's a path to understanding that is then, in fact, the path to change. That's why I'm so passionate about this work being holistic. If we're going to work on your voice, we have to work on your whole person because if you can't get intimate with your body as an instrument, you will have a really hard time creating meaningful change with your voice. If you can't be honest about the ways in which you're struggling, it's very difficult to then find the path to progress. It's very difficult to exercise the type of compassion toward yourself that you would need to grow with any sort of efficiency. And there's a reason that you've turned off these things. Like I said a few moments ago, there's a reason that you've turned off this awareness. It's a survival technique. And that's why I'm so sympathetic to everyone who has this experience. I'm sympathetic because I have this experience. But you also have to kind of giggle sometimes when you ask someone how they're doing. They clearly are suffering. And their response is, no, I'm fine. I just got to figure out how to breathe better. Yeah, it's my breath. It's my breath. It's my breath. It's my breath. I've heard this so many times. To which I say, I know that you're struggling with your breath, but might I offer that sometimes the breath is simply a symptom and not a cause. A symptom and not a cause. In fact, if you understand the functionality of the voice in particular, you know that this is very much true, that the breath doesn't make the sound. The vocal folds, the vocal cords make the sound. The vocal cords control how much breath moves through on the exhale when you're making sound. So fundamentally, it's not true that your breath is the cause. While your breath is the gas for the car, and the car needs gas to run, it also needs an engine. And the engine is sort of central to how it is that the car moves and the speed it can go, how it hums and how it purrs. This is evident in so many different areas of our lives where we'll experience sickness or illness. And so much of how we've been raised, especially for those of us who are raised in Western culture, has been focused on mitigating symptoms. I mean, you've likely thought about this before, but what I'm talking about is not different than going to the doctor. Actually, let me give you another example of this that will feel very relevant. Many people experience acid reflux. In fact, almost everyone who has ever had any sort of vocal injury has also experienced acid reflux or GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. There are a lot of different ways in which you may or may not be aware of this. A lot of times people think of this simply as heartburn. It's not. Heartburn, again, that's one level up from what's going on. But let me offer that the only reason one would experience reflux, which then causes inflammation and swelling of the vocal fold tissue and discomfort in the throat and maybe excess mucus and sometimes a lump in the throat or a feeling like you were going to vomit. Let me say that if you go to a doctor, so often what they will do is they will give you what's called a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor. Um, and they do that to mitigate the reflux, the acid, let's say in simple terms. But that is not the problem. The reason that one refluxes is not simply because there is acid. See, acid is a necessary part of breaking down food. The reason that one refluxes, and boy, don't I know this from many years of personal experience, but the reason that one refluxes, there are myriad reasons, but fundamentally it has to do with an imbalance in the gut microbiome. A lot of times this has to do with the imbalance of our gut bacteria. But even more complicated is the fact that it also can be tied to stress. It can be tied to discomfort. It can be tied to fear. It can be tied to, a bad living situation or simply chronic anxiety. You can't simply say that the reflux is the problem. If you take the pill, you will experience relief. I know you will. But you won't have identified the cause. You will simply have mitigated the symptom. And that will feel temporarily satisfying. Oh, let me also offer that reflux has everything to do with what you eat, too. Everything to do with what you eat. And just for the record, I do have a lot of experience with this personally. I have overcome some real gut health issues. Maybe someday I'll do a episode on this, but I experienced chronic reflux for a long time and ultimately was able to get ahead of it through the work with a functional doctor and someone who was really interested in helping me identify root cause. And I ultimately realized I was in the midst of a situation that I was experiencing mold poisoning. And yeah, it's a long story, but I took those PPIs too. I took the proton pump inhibitors too. I felt better too. But that didn't ultimately fix the issue. I had to go on a very, very long, winding road to find my way to where I am now, which I got to tell you, I feel great. I really watch what I eat in specific situations, but I have expanded my diet lately and I just feel I'm so grateful. Every day I'm so grateful that I'm not suffering like I was. But if I would have just taken those PPIs, there are so many potential side effects, and a lot of people take them long term. And if you are one of those people, I totally get it. I understand why you do, but I also would really encourage you to look into the research around the long term side effects, particularly around bone health and brain health, um, from things like Prilosec and so forth. Just do some research. Very necessary on this journey. Okay, I've gotten down an interesting path, but hopefully you catch what it is that I'm going to, because this is how we're conditioned. We have a pain. We want to get rid of that symptom. We get sick. We want to feel better. And typically we want the fastest way. And that is just not the most efficient path. Now, here's another thing in this category that I want you to consider. And this came up very explicitly recently in a coaching session where someone came to me and said, this week I have felt so tight. I just feel tight. And I said, wow, what's going on? Not much. Everything's pretty good. I'm doing good. Well, and then a little further into the conversation, this person confessed to me that they have to have a medical procedure, that they have a child on the way. They have all this stuff going on where I was just, giggling because I was like, I would be tight too. There's a lot going on. But what this conversation unraveled, which was so beautiful, was that this person has a story about themselves that they are very skillful at handling difficult situations. They see themselves as someone who's calm in a storm. They see themselves as someone who can remain cool amidst the fire. To which I also kind of have to giggle because that used to be me too. I loved being the one that didn't overreact. I loved being the one that was cool as a cucumber while everyone else was freaking out. But what I realized in my own spiritual journey, that response that I was so skillful at was simply repression. Repression based on an inherent fear or unwillingness to feel my own discomfort. An unwillingness to sit in the shit of life, because life is shitty sometimes. Like, hard stuff happens. People get sick. There's turmoil. People lose money. They lose jobs. They have failures. People die. There's grief. There's loss. There's war. There's so much that we are confronted with that are very real threats to our livelihood, that feel like they inhibit our ability to flourish. And none of that does anyone have the capacity to walk away from entirely unscathed. But the wounds that we suffer, the wounds that you have suffered, are also such an essential part of what makes you so special and so beautiful. And they give you the capacity to grow. They give you the skills and the wisdom and the tools to then be more skillful in your response. And so within my own life, I had to really, and this was through meditation specifically, through meditation, get comfortable sitting in my discomfort. And that's kind of a misnomer. I'm still to this day not comfortable sitting in my discomfort, but I'm willing. I'm willing to sit with it and to feel it and to cry and to suffer, because I know that it's okay to feel this. And actually, my capacity to feel it is the fastest path through. It's the only way to really identify the cause and not just try to whack-a-mole the symptom. See, the problem is with this breath thing is you could go to a bunch of different voice teachers and they could tell you 100 different things that will help you with your breath. But if you're still walking around afraid to sing, it's not going to satisfy. You're not going to be able to breathe how you want to breathe regardless. This confrontation, this self confrontation of the whole experience that you're having and that your body so skillfully points you toward. And when you do that, you have to give up the story sometimes that you're someone that can handle hard things easily. It's actually pretty dramatic. It's something like an egoic death. You might have to die to this image you have of yourself that you're not bothered by the little stuff. Ah, it's fine. Get over it. Pull up your pants. Put your boots on. Go out there and get it. I think so often about children when I have this sort of conversation, because if you were to see a small child standing up in front of a group, and let's stick with our singing example, but their fear of singing, what would you do? Now, certainly there are some people in the world that would say, hey, buck up, do it. But I think most of us would say, it's okay. You got this. We all get scared sometimes. It's okay. Can you breathe a little more deeply? Can you stand up straight? We're here to support you. Do you need to take a break? Do you want to try again later? Why are we often so unwilling to speak to ourselves with that sort of gentle, loving, caring kindness and compassion? Why are we so violent toward ourselves? Why are we so chastising in the midst of our struggle? Why won't we even let ourselves feel the pain? And I know the answer is because it feels overwhelming. It feels like it might be too much. But you, my friend, you are actually so strong. You have so much ability within you, and you have so much opportunity to continue to grow and expand your ability and capacity. But I know very well from my own experience and from watching many, 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 many artists and singers and creatives and speakers and humans over the years that it is a much slower path if you're rough on yourself along the way. And it's even slower if you turn off your capacity to feel and you blame the most obvious symptom. You fixate on the most obvious symptom. If you think, if I could just get this, then this. If I could just master, then um, you contain multitudes. You are a spiritual being. You are an embodied being. You're a heart centered being. You have emotions. You are dedicated to survival. And you also want to thrive. And there's a complexity in that. And your path, it will never be fast if you do it right, but it will always be worthwhile. Now, let me also say that even though at times it will feel slow, when you look back, you will reflect that it was at the perfect pace. In fact, you will often reflect that it was faster than you could even imagine. So, what are the symptoms in your life that you're ignoring? Again, if I go back to the previous episode, if you're really honest with yourself, if you really look yourself in the mirror and you go, where am I on this journey? And maybe you journal about it. Take a 30,000-foot view of your life right now. Where am I? And if you're honest about that, what have you in front of you that is actually pointing you toward something a little bit more expansive in your understanding, something deeper, something you might have been fearful of confronting? And let me offer that your body is always objective in its truth. What is not objective is your interpretation of it. But if you are struggling in your body, something's wrong. If you feel pain, if you feel discomfort or uneasiness, if you feel constriction and tightness in a way that is not good, those are always clues and cues. Those are always symptoms that are telling you there's more investigation to do. There's more growth. There's an opportunity here to heal the wound, to gather wisdom, to grow and to change and to create and to love more. First yourself, so that then you can share that with others. The body is always objectively true. Your thinking is often subjectively false. Isn't that a bummer? Your feelings, they're actually often more useful than your thinking. If we go one up from your body, we go into that feeling space and we go, what does it feel like? But so often we don't trust our feelings because we rationalize them away. Well, maybe it's supposed to hurt. Maybe I'm supposed to struggle. Maybe. But your body, your feelings, your heart, your gut, it's all pointing you toward the possibility of a deeper relationship with your inner being, with your inner self. And it's always pointing you toward growth, toward expansion, toward achieving your heart's desire. So when you experience something like this, I want you to ask yourself, is this a symptom or a cause? And then, if you can, join me in adopting this mantra. It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. It's okay to feel this. I wake up sad. It's okay to feel this. I wake up mad. It's okay to feel this. I look at the news and I'm disheartened. It's okay to feel this. I try to sing and it's frustrating. It's okay to feel this. Because once you feel it, there's the opportunity for inspired action, for clear thinking. You then open a portal toward growth. I feel this right now with you. I love each and every one of you. I'm so grateful for you as a community. I want to end today by saying that it's my goal that these episodes would feel timeless, but I also just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of discomfort in current events in the world, geopolitical events, climate catastrophe, human rights. And I'm disheartened by so much of it. I'm scared at times. But I live in a universe that carries infinite possibility. And I hold an optimism that my life and your life are all pointed on a perfect trajectory. And that when we connect with each other and share in our discomfort, but also share in our joys, that we have the capacity to overcome even the most difficult hurdles that life seems to put in our way. We together can inspire and potentially even thrive in the midst of difficulty, in the midst of suffering. And we can feel all of it together. That's all for now. Until next time, peace.